The bathroom door crashed open with a force that sent steam billowing into the hallway. Stephanie froze, her wet sneakers squeaking against Italian marble as her eyes locked onto the most beautiful man she'd ever seen, completely naked in a sunken bathtub, his obsidian eyes boring into hers with a mixture of shock and something far more dangerous. Water cascaded down his sculpted chest as he stood, unapologetic and furious. "You have exactly 5 seconds to explain why you're in my private bathroom," Lee Kyung's voice boomed, "before I call security and have you arrested for breaking and entering." But Stephanie couldn't speak. Because carved into the wall behind him, hidden beneath a sliding panel that her forced entry had accidentally revealed, was the symbol she'd spent 12 years searching for. It was the mark of her parents' killers. Hey, beautiful souls. Welcome to Soul Tales with Gold. We're on a mission to hit 2,000 subscribers, and your support means everything. Hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and drop a comment telling me if you'd accidentally walk in on a hot CEO in the bath, or if I'm the only messy one here. Now, let's dive into Stephanie's dangerous world. The smell of Atlanta's downtown district hit Stephanie like a forgotten memory. Exhaust fumes mixed with southern heat and the distant aroma of fried chicken from Busy Bee Cafe. 12 years. It had been 12 years since she'd walked these streets as a frightened 16-year-old girl, watching her family's empire crumble alongside the bodies of her parents. Now, at 28, she was back. But nobody would recognize the deliberately disheveled woman slouching through Hartsfield-Jackson Airport in oversized sweatpants and a stained hoodie, her long dark hair pulled into a messy bun with yesterday's edges showing. She'd perfected the art of invisibility, of making people underestimate her, dismiss her, forget she existed. It was her greatest weapon. Stephanie. Over here." Her older brother Michael waved frantically from beside a sleek black Mercedes. Even from 50 feet away, she could see the disappointment settling into his features as he took in her appearance. "Perfect. Jesus Christ, Steph," Michael muttered as she approached, not even attempting to hug her. "We talked about this. The family is already on edge about you coming back. Could you at least try to look like you belong at the estate?" Stephanie yawned dramatically, nearly dropping the battered duffel bag that contained everything she owned, or at least, everything she wanted them to think she owned. "I was on a plane for 12 hours, Mike. What did you expect? A ball gown. I expected my sister, who's been studying abroad in Tokyo for over a decade, to show some growth." His jaw tightened as he opened the car door for her. "Get in. And please, for the love of God, tell me you at least learned something useful over there besides how to dress like a teenager." If only he knew. The Stephanie who'd left Atlanta at 16 had been broken, traumatized, shipped off to distant relatives in Japan under the guise of education, while the family business, a multi-million-dollar export conglomerate her father had built from nothing, was absorbed by the Patterson empire under suspicious circumstances. The Pattersons had swooped in like vultures, offering to save the company when her mother and father died in what police ruled as a tragic car accident. But Stephanie knew better. She'd spent 12 years transforming herself under the tutelage of her mother's older brother, Uncle Hiroshi, who operated in the shadows of Tokyo's most dangerous districts. He taught her everything: martial arts from multiple disciplines, weapons mastery, hacking, surveillance, the subtle art of information gathering. She could kill a man with her pinky finger or dismantle a corporation with a laptop. She spoke 5 languages fluently and could forge documents that would fool government agencies. But here in Atlanta, she was just the disappointing youngest child who'd run away from responsibility. "So, catch me up," Stephanie said, staring out the window as familiar neighborhoods blurred past. "What fresh hell awaits me at home?" Michael's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Uncle Vernon has arranged 7 potential suitors for you to meet this month." Stephanie's head whipped around. 7? I've been back for exactly 40 minutes. He's been planning this since you confirmed your return date 3 months ago. Michael's voice carried a note of sympathy now. "You know how he is. With Dad gone, he thinks he's responsible for marrying off all the women in the family, appropriately. Angela already got married off to that banker from Charleston, and Cousin Rita is engaged to a congressman's son. And I'm the last defective product that needs to be shipped out," Stephanie finished bitterly. His words, not mine. Michael sighed. Look, just meet them. Smile. Be polite for once. Then turn them all down gently if you want. But we need to keep Uncle Vernon happy until the board meeting next month. Stephanie's ears perked up. What board meeting? The annual shareholder meeting for Patterson-Monroe Industries. Michael glanced at her quickly before returning his eyes to the road. They merged our company with theirs completely 5 years ago. We hold 20% of the shares through the family trust, but we're minority stakeholders. Uncle Vernon has been trying to gain more influence, but the Pattersons still control everything. And the CEO? Some hotshot who took over 3 years ago. Lee Kyung. Korean-American, 32, graduated top of his class from Wharton, and apparently has the Midas touch. Everything he invests in turns to gold. The Patterson family brought him in to run their American operations, and he's tripled their revenue. Lee Kyung. Stephanie committed the name to memory. Anyone running her family's company, even under the Patterson name, was someone she needed to investigate. He's also the most eligible bachelor in Atlanta, Michael added with a sidelong glance. Uncle Vernon already tried to set up Angela with him, but he wasn't interested. Didn't even show up to the introduction dinner. Smart man, Stephanie muttered. The Monroe estate came into view, a sprawling antebellum-style mansion that had been in the family for 4 generations, sitting on 15 acres in Buckhead. Despite everything, seeing it again made Stephanie's throat tight. She'd played in those gardens as a child, learned to ride bikes on that circular driveway, had her first kiss behind the pool house. Before everything turned to blood and ashes. Brace yourself, Michael warned as they pulled up to the front entrance. The welcoming committee is out in force. Indeed, at least a dozen family members clustered on the front steps, led by Uncle Vernon Monroe, her father's older brother, a barrel-chested man in his 60s who'd taken control of the family's remaining assets after her parents died. His wife, Aunt Patricia, stood beside him looking like she'd just sucked on a lemon. There she is. Uncle Vernon's booming voice carried across the driveway. Our little world traveler. Stephanie climbed out of the car, deliberately tripping on the curb and catching herself at the last second. Several family members exchanged glances. She could practically hear their thoughts. Still clumsy. Still useless. Good. Uncle Vernon, she said, allowing herself to be engulfed in his crushing hug that smelled of expensive cigars and bourbon. It's been too long. That it has. He held her at arm's length, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Though I must say, I expected more from 12 years in Tokyo. You look like you just rolled out of bed. Long flight, Stephanie mumbled, ducking her head. Well, we'll get you cleaned up soon enough. I've taken the liberty of arranging your social calendar for the next few weeks. Several promising young men from excellent families are eager to make your acquaintance. Uncle Vernon, I just got back. Can't I at least settle in first? Nonsense. You're 28 years old, Stephanie. Most women your age are already married with children. We need to make up for lost time. He clapped his hands together. In fact, your first introduction dinner is tonight at 7. Tyrell Johnson, his father, owns the largest construction company in the Southeast. Harvard-educated, excellent prospects. Stephanie's eye twitched. Tonight? I don't even have. Aunt Patricia has already arranged for appropriate clothing to be delivered to your room. Now run along and make yourself presentable. The Johnsons are very punctual people. As if on cue, Aunt Patricia stepped forward, her lips pursed in perpetual disapproval. I've also arranged for a hairstylist to come by at 4. That mess on your head simply won't do. Stephanie touched her deliberately messy bun self-consciously, a gesture that was pure acting. Yes, Aunt Patricia. And please try to engage in intelligent conversation tonight, her aunt continued. The Johnsons are cultured people. They expect a certain level of sophistication. Translation: try not to embarrass us. Michael caught Stephanie's eye and gave her a sympathetic shrug as Aunt Patricia escorted her into the house. Inside, everything was exactly as she remembered, the grand foyer with its double staircase, the crystal chandelier her mother had imported from Vienna, the portrait gallery featuring 4 generations of Monroes. But her parents' portraits were missing. Where are my mom and dad's paintings? Stephanie asked suddenly, stopping in her tracks. Aunt Patricia barely paused. We had them moved to storage. Uncle Vernon thought it was too painful to see them every day. Now come along, your room is ready. Rage, white-hot and familiar, flashed through Stephanie's veins. But she kept her face blank, her shoulders slumped, as she followed her aunt up the stairs. They wanted her docile and controllable? She'd give them exactly that. For now. Her childhood bedroom had been completely redecorated in shades of pale pink and cream, colors Stephanie had always hated. Every trace of her personality had been erased and replaced with generic elegance. "The stylist will be here in 2 hours," Aunt Patricia said crisply. "I suggest you shower and try to look alert." First impressions matter, Stephanie. The moment the door closed, Stephanie's entire demeanor changed. She moved with fluid grace to the window, checking sight lines and possible exit routes. Then she swept the room for surveillance devices, finding 2 cameras, one in the smoke detector, one in the bedside lamp. Uncle Vernon was watching her. Interesting. She left the cameras in place, but adjusted her movements to stay in their blind spots as she unpacked. From the bottom of her duffel bag, she removed a laptop that looked like a cheap tourist purchase, but contained military-grade encryption and hacking software. Within minutes, she'd connected to the house's Wi-Fi network, laughably easy to breach, and started downloading data. Property records, financial statements, email archives, board meeting minutes. The Patterson-Monroe merger hadn't just been a buyout, it had been a hostile takeover disguised as a rescue. Her father's company had been systematically stripped of its most valuable assets before being absorbed. And Uncle Vernon had not only allowed it to happen, he'd profited from it. Her own family had sold them out. Stephanie's hands trembled with fury as she clicked through the documents. But it was the next file that made her blood run cold. Hidden in the encrypted archives was a police report from the night her parents died, the original report, before it had been amended to show a tragic accident. Brake lines deliberately cut. Signs of forced entry into the car's computer system. A witness who saw a black van following her parents' car, a witness who later recanted their statement and moved out of state. Someone had murdered her parents and covered it up. And Uncle Vernon's signature appeared on multiple documents authorizing the closure of the investigation. A knock at the door made Stephanie close the laptop with lightning speed, shoving it under a pillow and throwing herself onto the bed in a deliberately awkward sprawl. "Come in," she called, affecting a sleepy voice. A young woman in a professional blazer entered, carrying what looked like a tackle box of makeup supplies. "Hi, I'm Jasmine, your stylist for this evening. Aunt Patricia said we need to perform a miracle in 2 hours, so let's get started." Stephanie allowed herself to be primped and polished, all while her mind raced. She needed access to Patterson-Monroe Industries headquarters. She needed to identify everyone who'd been involved in her parents' deaths. And she needed to do it all while maintaining her cover as the family disappointment. The blind dates might actually be useful. They'd give her an excuse to be out of the house, meeting people, gathering information. As long as she could stomach the parade of eligible bachelors who saw her as nothing more than a trophy wife. 3 hours later, Stephanie stood in front of her mirror, barely recognizing herself. Jasmine had transformed her deliberately messy hair into sleek, flowing dark waves that cascaded past her shoulders. Her makeup was flawless, highlighting her high cheekbones and bringing out the golden undertones in her brown skin. The dress Aunt Patricia had chosen was a sophisticated navy blue sheath that actually fit perfectly. She looked like someone who belonged in Atlanta's high society. She hated it. "You look stunning," Jasmine said proudly. "Tyrell Johnson won't know what hit him." Stephanie forced a smile. "Thanks for your help." Downstairs, Uncle Vernon was waiting in the foyer, checking his watch impatiently. His eyes widened when he saw her. "Well, well," he said, his voice carrying an edge of surprise. "There's a proper Monroe lady under all that carelessness after all." "Excellent. The Johnsons just arrived. Now remember, be charming, be interested in what Tyrell has to say, and for God's sake, don't mention anything about your time in Japan. We've told everyone you were studying art history." "Art history?" Stephanie repeated. "It sounds better than whatever you were actually doing over there," Uncle Vernon said dismissively. "Now smile." The Johnsons were waiting in the formal dining room, Tyrell's parents, his younger sister, and the man himself. Tyrell was handsome in a conventional way, tall and athletic with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in his life. He stood when Stephanie entered, his eyes traveling appreciatively over her figure in a way that made her skin crawl. "Stephanie," he said, extending his hand. "I've heard so much about you." "All lies, I'm sure," Stephanie replied, shaking his hand. His grip was too firm, too possessive. This was going to be a long night. Dinner was exactly as excruciating as she'd anticipated. Tyrell dominated the conversation, talking endlessly about his golf handicap, his new Porsche, and his plans to expand his father's business into commercial real estate. He asked Stephanie exactly 2 questions: what her favorite color was and whether she liked children. "I'm thinking 4 kids," Tyrell announced over dessert, as if they'd already agreed to get married. 2 boys and 2 girls. Nice even number. My parents have already offered to help us build on their property in Marietta. Stephanie's fork paused halfway to her mouth. That's very specific planning for a first date. Why waste time? Tyrell flashed what he probably thought was a charming smile. We're both from good families. We're at the right age. My mother says you need someone to give you direction, and I'm happy to provide that. Direction, Stephanie repeated flatly. You know structure. Purpose. My wife won't need to work, of course. I make plenty to support a family. You can focus on the house, the children, charitable committees. The things women are naturally good at. Across the table, Uncle Vernon was nodding approvingly. This was exactly the kind of match he wanted, someone who would take Stephanie off his hands and keep her busy with domestic duties, far away from any family business or questions about the past. Something inside Stephanie snapped. "Excuse me," she said sweetly, setting down her fork. "I need to use the ladies' room." She didn't wait for permission. In the hallway, she pulled out her phone and texted Michael, "Emergency. Fake a crisis in 5 minutes or I'm burning this house down." His response was immediate, on it. Stephanie returned to the table with an apologetic smile plastered on her face. "Sorry about that." "Please, Tyrell, you were saying something about my natural abilities." But before Tyrell could continue his patronizing monologue, Michael burst into the dining room, looking panicked. "Uncle Vernon. Stephanie. We have a situation. The alarm at the storage facility is going off, the one where we keep the company archives. Security says there might be a break-in." Uncle Vernon stood abruptly. "What?" "Those files are irreplaceable." He turned to the Johnsons. "I'm so sorry, but this is a family emergency. We'll need to reschedule." Of course, Mr. Johnson said, already standing. "These things happen." Tyrell looked disappointed but leaned toward Stephanie. "I'll call you tomorrow. We can continue getting to know each other." "Can't wait," Stephanie lied through her teeth. The moment the Johnsons left, Uncle Vernon turned on Michael. "This better not be a false alarm. Those archives contain 40 years of business records." "Security is checking now," Michael said. Then, catching Stephanie's eye, "Stephanie, maybe you should come with us? You know, in case we need to identify any of Dad's old files." "Good thinking," Uncle Vernon said, already heading for the door. "Let's go." In the car, with Uncle Vernon driving ahead in his own vehicle, Michael turned to Stephanie. "You owe me big time. I had to bribe the security guard $50 to trigger that alarm. Tyrell Johnson wanted me to be a housewife with 4 children in Marietta," Stephanie said. "Your $50 saved his life." Michael laughed, the first genuine emotion she'd seen from him all day. "That bad?" "Worse. How many more of these horror shows do I have to endure?" 6 more scheduled over the next 3 weeks. Michael's smile faded. "Stephanie, I know this sucks. But Uncle Vernon controls your trust fund until you're 30 or married. If you don't play along, he'll cut you off completely. I don't care about the money. Maybe you should. That trust is worth $8 million, your inheritance from Mom and Dad. If Uncle Vernon designates you as financially irresponsible, he can redirect those funds to family business interests." Michael's fingers made air quotes. "Which basically means his pockets. $8 million. Money her parents had worked their entire lives to build. Money that should have been hers. Another thing Uncle Vernon had stolen. The storage facility was in an industrial area near the airport, a nondescript building that housed the overflow of family documents, furniture, and other items deemed too valuable to throw away but not important enough to display. Like her parents' portraits. Security confirmed it was a false alarm, a malfunction in the system. Uncle Vernon spent 20 minutes berating the poor guard before finally agreeing to leave. But Stephanie hung back, pretending to examine some of her mother's old furniture. "Michael, you and Uncle Vernon go ahead," she called. "I want to spend a few minutes with Mom's things. I'll get a rideshare back." Uncle Vernon looked suspicious, but Michael intervened. "Let her have this, Uncle Vernon. She just got back. She's emotional." After they left, Stephanie waited exactly 10 minutes before moving with purpose to the back of the storage facility, where corporate archives were kept in climate-controlled units. Her lockpicking skills made short work of the unit door. Inside were rows of filing cabinets containing decades of Monroe family business records. But Stephanie knew exactly what she was looking for: the original contracts from the Patterson merger, the insurance documents from her parents' deaths, and any correspondence between her uncle and the Patterson family from that period. She found them in a locked drawer at the back. And there, paper-clipped to a life insurance policy with her parents' names on it, was a photograph she'd never seen before. Her mother and father at some kind of formal event, smiling at the camera. But in the background, partially obscured by other guests, was a man whose face made Stephanie's blood run cold. Because she'd seen that same face in dozens of photographs over the past 12 years, always in the background, always watching, appearing at crime scenes and business deals across 3 continents. The man with no name. The ghost her uncle Hiroshi had taught her to track. The one they suspected of being connected to organized crime networks spanning from Tokyo to New York. He'd been at an event with her parents weeks before they died. Stephanie photographed everything with her phone, including the mysterious man's face. Then she carefully replaced the files exactly as she'd found them and locked the drawer. She now had concrete proof that her parents' deaths weren't random. Someone had been tracking them, watching them, and somehow, that same someone was connected to the Patterson family, which meant her blind dates and Uncle Vernon's controlling behavior were about to become the least of her problems. Okay, pause. Can we talk about Uncle Vernon for a second? Because that man is messy with a capital M. What do you think he's hiding? Drop your theories in the comments. I'm reading every single one. And if you're loving this story so far, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Now, let's get back to Stephanie because things are about to get spicy. The rideshare dropped Stephanie back at the Monroe estate just after midnight. The house was dark except for a few security lights, and she slipped in through a side door, avoiding the main entrance where cameras were most concentrated. In her room, she uploaded all the photographs to her encrypted cloud storage and sent them to Uncle Hiroshi in Tokyo. His response came within minutes. The man in the photo is a known associate of several Yakuza families, but he operates independently. Very dangerous. Be careful. I'm sending you his last known locations. The file that followed made Stephanie's heart stop. The mystery man's most recent confirmed sighting, Atlanta, Georgia. 3 weeks ago. He was here. In the same city. Stephanie barely slept that night, her mind racing through possibilities and plans. By morning, she decided on her next move. She needed access to Patterson Monroe Industries headquarters. She needed to see what the company looked like from the inside, identify key players, and find out if anyone there recognized the mystery man. But getting inside wouldn't be easy. Security was notoriously tight, and she couldn't just walk in off the street. Unless... At breakfast, Uncle Vernon was already holding court at the head of the table, reading the financial news on his tablet while Aunt Patricia picked at a grapefruit. "Good morning," Stephanie said brightly, helping herself to coffee. "Uncle Vernon, I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about finding direction and purpose." Vernon looked up surprised. "Oh, I'd like to learn about the family business. Maybe start at the bottom, get a real understanding of how Patterson Monroe operates." She made her voice eager, naive. "I could intern in one of the departments. I'm sure there's something even someone with my limited skills could do." Uncle Vernon's eyes narrowed. This was clearly not what he'd expected. "The company is quite complex, Stephanie. Not really suitable for someone with your background. But how will I ever learn if I don't try? And it would look good to potential suitors, wouldn't it? Showing that I'm trying to be responsible. She played to his ego perfectly. You could supervise my progress, make sure I'm not messing anything up. She could see him considering it. Having her interning at the company would keep her busy, under his watchful eye, and away from asking uncomfortable questions about the past. Plus, it would make her seem more marriageable to the eligible bachelors. I suppose I could arrange something in human resources, he said slowly. Filing. Basic administrative work. Nothing critical. That would be perfect. Stephanie beamed at him. When can I start? I'll make some calls today. But Stephanie, his voice turned stern. This doesn't mean you can skip your social obligations. You still have 6 more introduction dinners scheduled. Of course not, Uncle Vernon. I wouldn't dream of it. That afternoon, Stephanie found herself standing in front of the Patterson-Monroe Industries headquarters, a gleaming 30-story tower in downtown Atlanta's business district. The building was a monument to corporate power, all glass and steel reaching toward the sky. Somewhere in there were the answers she needed. Uncle Vernon had arranged for her to start the following Monday in the HR department, but Stephanie couldn't wait that long. She needed to scout the building, understand its layout, identify security weak points. She was studying the entrance protocols when a sleek black town car pulled up to the VIP entrance. A man stepped out, and even from across the street, Stephanie could see that he commanded attention. Lee Kyung, the CEO himself. He was tall, probably 6'2", with the kind of elegant features that could have graced magazine covers. Sharp cheekbones, strong jaw, dark hair styled in a way that looked effortlessly perfect. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been made specifically for his body, which it probably had. But it was the way he moved that caught Stephanie's attention. There was a predatory grace to his stride, an awareness of his surroundings that suggested either military training or something darker. His eyes swept the street in a practiced pattern that Stephanie recognized. He was checking for threats. This was not just some Harvard MBA. As if sensing her observation, Lee Kyung's gaze locked directly onto where Stephanie stood across the street. For a moment that felt like an eternity, their eyes met. His were obsidian, dark, and utterly unreadable. Then he turned and disappeared into the building. Stephanie's heart was pounding. That brief moment of connection had felt electric, dangerous. Like touching a live wire. She needed to be more careful. But she also needed to know more about Lee Kyung. Over the next 2 days, Stephanie endured 2 more excruciating blind dates, one with a venture capitalist who spent the entire dinner talking about cryptocurrency, and another with a surgeon who rated her appearance on a scale of 1 to 10. She was a solid 7, maybe 7.5 with better posture. She turned them both down with manufactured politeness. But her real focus was on researching Lee Kyung. The official biography was impressive but vague. Born in Seoul, moved to the U.S. at age 10, graduated top of his class from Wharton, worked at Goldman Sachs for 3 years before transitioning to corporate leadership. He'd taken over Patterson-Monroe's American operations at age 29 and turned it into the most profitable division of the Patterson empire. But there were gaps. Years unaccounted for. A sealed juvenile record. And a series of business deals that seemed too perfect, too precisely timed, as if he had access to information he shouldn't have. Uncle Hiroshi's response to her inquiry was cryptic. Be very careful with Lee Kyung. His name appears in connection with several intelligence agencies. Unclear if he's an asset or something else. Intelligence agencies? What had the Patterson family brought into her parents' company? Monday morning arrived, and Stephanie presented herself at Patterson-Monroe headquarters dressed in conservative business casual, a beige blouse and black slacks that made her look simultaneously professional and forgettable. The HR department was on the 15th floor, a maze of cubicles and conference rooms humming with the quiet efficiency of corporate bureaucracy. You must be Stephanie Monroe, said a cheerful woman in her 40s, extending her hand. I'm Regina, the HR director. Your uncle spoke very highly of you. Stephanie doubted that but smiled anyway. Thank you for having me. We've set you up with some basic filing and database entry to start. Nothing too complicated. Regina's tone was kind but slightly condescending. Just until you get your feet under you. Translation, we think you're useless. But your uncle is on the board, so here's some busy work. Perfect. Stephanie spent the morning filing employee records and pretending to struggle with the database software, all while memorizing the building's layout, security protocols, and employee access patterns. The HR department had surprisingly high clearance. They needed it to process new hires and conduct background checks, which meant Stephanie now had legitimate access to most of the building. During her lunch break, she explored the cafeteria on the 10th floor, the mailroom in the basement, the executive offices on the 30th floor, where Lee Kyung's corner office commanded a view of the entire Atlanta skyline. She was studying the security panel outside the executive level when a voice behind her said, "Lost." Stephanie spun around, her heart leaping into her throat. Lee Kyung stood there, impeccably dressed in another tailored suit, his dark eyes fixed on her with the kind of intensity that made her feel completely transparent. Yes, actually, she stammered, channeling every bit of awkward energy she could muster. I was looking for the restroom, and I think I got off on the wrong floor. The restroom is 29 floors below, Lee Kyung said, his voice carrying a hint of amusement. This is the executive level. Restricted access. Oh God, I'm so sorry. Stephanie clutched her visitor badge like a lifeline. It's my first day. I'm completely turned around. He studied her for a long moment, and Stephanie had the uncomfortable sensation of being X-rayed. Those dark eyes seemed to see past her deliberate incompetence to something deeper. Stephanie Monroe, he read from her badge. You're Vernon Monroe's niece. Unfortunately, she muttered before she could stop herself. The corner of his mouth twitched almost a smile. Not a fan of your uncle? Is anyone? That definitely got a smile. Small, but genuine. It transformed his face from intimidating to devastating. The elevators are that way, Lee Kyung said, gesturing. Try to stay on the 15th floor for now. The executive level isn't somewhere you want to wander around accidentally. Noted, Stephanie said. Thanks for not having security throw me out. The day's not over yet. He turned and walked away, disappearing into his office, but Stephanie could feel his gaze on her until the elevator doors closed. That brief interaction told her several things. Lee Kyung was observant. He had a sense of humor buried under that corporate exterior, and he definitely didn't trust Uncle Vernon. Interesting. Over the next week, Stephanie settled into a routine. She played the bumbling intern during work hours, made mistakes that were just embarrassing enough to be believable, and accidentally discovered which security guards took longer smoke breaks and which executives left their computers unlocked when they went to lunch. At night, she hacked into the company servers from her bedroom, downloading files and following digital trails that led to offshore accounts, shell corporations, and business dealings that were definitely not legal. Patterson-Monroe Industries wasn't just an import-export company. It was a front for money laundering, arms dealing, and smuggling operations that spanned the globe. And Lee Kyung's signature was on dozens of documents authorizing these transactions. He wasn't just a CEO. He was running a criminal empire. But was he also connected to her parents' murders? Stephanie needed proof. Which meant she needed access to Lee Kyung's private files, the ones that weren't on the company servers. Which meant she needed to get into his personal residence. The opportunity came unexpectedly. It was Friday evening, and Stephanie was preparing to leave work when Regina called her into her office. I know this is last minute, Regina said, looking apologetic, but we need someone to deliver these documents to Mr. Lee's home. His executive assistant is out sick, and these need his signature tonight for a deal closing Monday morning. She held out a sealed envelope marked confidential. His home, Stephanie repeated. It's not far. He has a penthouse in the Sovereign Building in Midtown. Normally we'd use a courier service, but these documents are too sensitive. I need someone with company clearance. Regina hesitated. I know it's an imposition on your weekend. I'll do it, Stephanie said quickly. Too quickly. She adjusted her tone to sound reluctant. I mean, I guess I can. If it's really important. You're a lifesaver. The concierge is expecting a delivery. Just give them your name, and they'll direct you to the penthouse. Mr. Lee should be home by 7. The Sovereign was exactly what Stephanie expected, all luxury and pretension. The concierge checked her ID against a list and directed her to a private elevator that required a key card. Mr. Lee hasn't arrived home yet, the concierge said, but you're cleared to wait in the penthouse foyer. Just don't wander around. The security system is very sensitive. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse, which was even more stunning than Stephanie had anticipated. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the Atlanta skyline lit up against the evening sky. The decor was minimalist, but clearly expensive. Modern furniture in blacks and grays, abstract art on the walls, and a massive bookshelf filled with what looked like first editions. And absolutely no personal photographs. Stephanie's trained eye cataloged everything: security cameras in 3 corners, motion sensors by the windows, a sophisticated alarm panel by the door. This wasn't just a rich man's home. This was a fortress. She had maybe 10 minutes before Lee Kyung arrived. She could leave the documents and go, like she was supposed to. Or she could find his private office and see what secrets he was hiding. The decision took approximately half a second. Moving quickly but carefully to avoid triggering motion sensors, Stephanie explored the penthouse. Master bedroom, untouched, bed made with military precision. Guest room looked completely unused. Home gym with equipment that cost more than a car. And finally, a study. Unlike the rest of the penthouse, this room had personality. The desk was antique, probably Korean, with intricate carvings. More books lined the walls, a mix of business texts, philosophy, and, surprisingly, classic literature. And on the desk, a photograph. A young Lee Kyung, maybe 19 or 20, standing with an older man who shared his features. Both unsmiling. Both radiating the same dangerous intensity. Before Stephanie could examine it closer, she heard the elevator. Lee Kyung was home. Panic flashed through her. She couldn't be caught in his study. There was no innocent explanation for that. She needed to get back to the foyer, pretend she'd just arrived. But the study door was visible from the elevator. If she stepped out now, he'd see her leaving it. She heard his footsteps, heard him drop keys on a table. Then she heard him walking toward the back of the penthouse. Toward the master bedroom. Stephanie made a split-second decision. She slipped out of the study and moved silently toward the front door, where the documents sat on the foyer table. She'd grab them, pretend she'd just arrived. The sound of running water stopped her. He was in the bathroom. Actually, scratch that. Based on the acoustics, he was in the bath. This was her chance. While he was distracted, she could photograph everything in the study, download data from his home computer, and be gone before he even knew she'd been there. Stephanie pulled out her phone and crept back toward the study. She'd just started photographing the documents on his desk when she heard it, a loud crash from the bathroom, followed by what sounded like cursing in Korean. Then silence. Too much silence. Stephanie froze, every instinct screaming at her to run. But something, maybe curiosity, maybe stupidity, made her move toward the bathroom instead. The door was slightly ajar. Steam poured out into the hallway. "Mr. Lee," she called. "Are you okay?" No response. "I'm coming in," she announced, pushing the door open wider. The bathroom was enormous, all white marble and gleaming fixtures. And there, in the center, was a sunken bathtub the size of a small pool. Empty. No, not empty. A phone floated in the water, clearly dead. On the floor was a shattered glass, whiskey spreading across the marble. But no Lee Kyung. "Looking for me?" The voice came from directly behind her. Stephanie spun around and immediately wished she hadn't. Because there, blocking the bathroom doorway, stood Lee Kyung. Dripping wet. Completely naked. And holding a gun pointed directly at her chest. "You have exactly 5 seconds to explain why you're in my private bathroom," he said, his voice liquid steel and deadly calm, "before I call security and have you arrested for breaking and entering." Stephanie opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Because carved into the wall behind him, partially hidden by the open shower door, was a symbol she recognized. The same symbol that had been paper-clipped to her parents' case file. The same symbol that appeared in connection with the mystery man who'd been tracking her family. A serpent eating its own tail, with 3 stars above it. Lee Kyung followed her gaze, and something flickered across his face, surprise, then calculation. "You recognize it," he said. It wasn't a question. Stephanie's mind raced. "I brought documents for you to sign. I heard a crash. I thought you might be hurt. So you decided to barge into my bathroom?" The door was open. And the study I assume you were searching? Lee Kyung took a step closer, water still dripping down his chest. The gun never wavered. Don't bother lying. I have cameras everywhere. Stephanie's stomach dropped. Of course he did. I was looking for the bathroom, she tried weakly. You were looking for information, Lee Kyung corrected. About the symbol. About your parents. About why they died. The world tilted. He knew. How? Stephanie's voice broke. I've known who you were since the moment you arrived in Atlanta, Lee Kyung said. Did you really think I wouldn't recognize Jonathan and Diana Monroe's daughter? Even with your ridiculous act of incompetence. All of Stephanie's carefully constructed covers, her deliberate awkwardness, her pretense at being useless, he'd seen through all of it from the beginning. The question is, Lee Kyung continued, finally lowering the gun, what do I do with you now? You could start by putting on pants, Stephanie managed, desperately trying to regain some composure. He glanced down at himself, seeming to notice his state of undress for the first time. Fair point. Don't move. He walked past her to the bedroom, completely unbothered by his nakedness. Stephanie stayed frozen in place, her mind spinning. Lee Kyung knew who she was. He knew about her parents. And he had the symbol, the one connected to their murders, carved into his bathroom wall. He was either her enemy or her only ally. She had no idea which. When he returned, he'd thrown on black pants and a t-shirt, his dark hair still wet. The gun was gone, but Stephanie suspected it wasn't far. Sit, he said, gesturing to the leather couch in the living room. I should go. Sit. We need to talk. It wasn't a suggestion. Stephanie sat. Lee Kyung poured himself a drink, whiskey, straight, and then surprised her by pouring a second glass and handing it to her. You're going to need that, he said. Are you going to kill me? If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead. He settled into the chair across from her, those obsidian eyes studying her face. You've been investigating your parents' deaths for 12 years. Training with Hiroshi Tanaka in Tokyo. Learning how to fight, how to hack, how to kill. Stephanie's blood ran cold. How do you know about Uncle Hiroshi? Because I've been investigating your parents' deaths for just as long. The room spun. What? Jonathan and Diana Monroe were murdered on my orders, Lee Kyung said quietly. By a criminal organization called the Ouroboros Syndicate. That symbol you saw, that's their mark. Stephanie was on her feet before she realized she'd moved, her hand reaching for a weapon she didn't have. You son of a... I said on my orders. Not by me. Lee Kyung remained seated, infuriatingly calm. Sit down, Stephanie. Let me finish. Why the hell should I? Because I'm probably the only person in this city who wants justice for them as much as you do. Something in his voice made her pause. Pain. Real, raw pain. Slowly, she sat back down. My father was David Lee, he began. He was an FBI agent investigating the Ouroboros Syndicate, an international criminal organization that deals in everything from weapons to human trafficking. Your parents weren't just running an import-export business. They were FBI informants helping my father build a case against the syndicate. Stephanie's world was reshaping itself with every word. The syndicate found out. They ordered hits on everyone involved in the investigation. Your parents were killed first. My father died 3 weeks later, car bomb in D.C. Made to look like an accident, just like your parents. I don't understand, Stephanie whispered. Why are you running Patterson Monroe if you know they're connected to the syndicate? Because the Patterson family IS the syndicate. At least, the American operations. Lee Kyung's jaw tightened. I've spent the last 8 years infiltrating their organization, working my way up from junior analyst to CEO. Gaining their trust. Documenting their crimes. Building an airtight case. You're undercover, Stephanie breathed. I'm a ghost. Officially, I don't exist. No agency claims me. If I'm caught, I'll be disavowed and killed. He met her eyes. So now you know my secret. The question is, what do we do about yours? Your Uncle Vernon is one of the syndicate's key partners in the Southeast. He helped arrange your parents' murders in exchange for control of the Monroe family assets. He's been using your family's company to launder money for years. Everything clicked into place. Uncle Vernon's eagerness to marry her off, his control over her trust fund, his insistence on keeping her away from the business. He's afraid I'll find out, Stephanie said. He's afraid you already know more than you're letting on. That's why he's watching you so carefully. Lee Kyung leaned forward. You need to leave Atlanta, Stephanie. Tonight. Go back to Japan. Stay with Hiroshi. Because if Vernon even suspects you're investigating. No. This isn't a game. These people are. These people murdered my parents. Stephanie's voice was steel. I didn't spend 12 years training to run away now. Lee Kyung studied her for a long moment. You want revenge. I want justice. There's a difference. Not much of one. Then help me. Stephanie leaned forward. You've been working alone for 8 years. You said it yourself, if you're caught, you're disavowed. But if we work together? Absolutely not. Why? Because I can't protect you and maintain my cover. Because you're untrained in undercover work. Because he stopped himself. Because what? Lee Kyung's expression was unreadable. Because I've already failed to protect everyone else I cared about. I won't add you to that list. The admission hung in the air between them. I don't need your protection, Stephanie said quietly. I need a partner. You don't even know me. I know you've been living a lie for 8 years. I know you're trying to destroy the people who killed your father. I know you recognize the look in my eyes right now because you see it in the mirror every day. She held his gaze. I know we're the same. Lee Kyung was quiet for so long that Stephanie thought he might refuse. Then, if we do this, if I agree to work with you, you follow my rules. My timeline. When I say back off, you back off. When I say run, you run. I'm not good at taking orders. I've noticed. The corner of his mouth quirked. But this is non-negotiable. One mistake could get us both killed. Stephanie extended her hand. Partners? Lee Kyung looked at her hand, then at her face, then back at her hand. Finally, he took it. Partners, he agreed. His hand was warm, his grip firm. And when their palms touched, Stephanie felt that same electric current she'd experienced when their eyes met across the street. Dangerous. This man was dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with guns or secrets. First rule, Lee Kyung said, releasing her hand. You need to maintain your cover as the useless niece. Keep going to those ridiculous blind dates. Keep playing the disappointment. Vernon can't suspect anything has changed. What about Patterson Monroe? I'm supposed to be interning. Continue that too. But we'll set up a secure way to communicate. He pulled out his phone. Give me your number. Stephanie rattled it off, and a moment later her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Testing. That's a burner, Lee Kyung explained. Encrypted. Untraceable. Use it only for messages to me. Never call unless it's a true emergency. What counts as an emergency? Imminent death. That's comforting. He almost smiled. Welcome to undercover work. They spent the next hour going over logistics, how to pass information without being observed, which family events Lee Kyung would attend as CEO where they could interact without suspicion, what to do if Vernon became hostile. By the time Stephanie left, with the signed documents Regina needed, it was nearly midnight. Her head was spinning with information, plans, and the surreal reality that she'd just formed an alliance with the man who ran her parents' company. A man who, she was starting to realize, affected her in ways that had nothing to do with their shared mission. Dangerous, she reminded herself as she drove back to the Monroe estate. But maybe dangerous was exactly what she needed. The next morning, Stephanie woke to 17 missed calls from Uncle Vernon and a text, family emergency. Breakfast meeting. 8 a.m. Not optional. She arrived at the dining room to find the entire extended family assembled, aunts, uncles, cousins she barely remembered. Everyone looked worried. Uncle Vernon stood at the head of the table, his face grave. We have a serious problem, he announced. The FBI has opened an investigation into Patterson Monroe Industries. They're looking into our tax filings, our international transactions, everything. Stephanie's heart raced. Was this Lee Kyung's doing? What does this mean for us? Aunt Patricia asked nervously. It means we need to close ranks. Present a united front. Show the FBI that we're a legitimate, respectable family business. Uncle Vernon's gaze swept the room. Which means all pending marriage arrangements are now top priority. We need to demonstrate family stability. His eyes landed on Stephanie. Especially you. I've arranged for you to meet someone very important tomorrow night. Jared Patterson. The room went silent. As in, the Patterson family? Michael asked. The oldest grandson, Uncle Vernon, confirmed. He's expressed interest in getting to know Stephanie. This could be exactly the alliance we need right now. Stephanie's blood ran cold. Jared Patterson, one of the syndicate leaders Lee Kyung was trying to bring down. I don't think, she began. This is not a request. Uncle Vernon's voice was hard. You will meet Jared. You will be charming. And you will seriously consider his suit. Do I make myself clear? Everyone was staring at her. Crystal, Stephanie managed. As soon as she could escape, she texted Lee Kyung's burner, Vernon setting me up with Jared Patterson tomorrow night. What do I do? The response came within seconds. Go. This is perfect. Get close to Jared. But be extremely careful, he's dangerous. No kidding. I mean it, Stephanie. Jared isn't just spoiled rich kid. He's killed people. Don't underestimate him. Noted. Any advice? Yes. Don't be alone with him. Ever. Comforting. The next evening, Stephanie dressed for her date with Jared in a deep sapphire dress that Aunt Patricia had selected elegant, but not too sexy, expensive, but not flashy. Her hair was styled in soft waves, her makeup perfect. She looked like exactly what she was supposed to be, a Monroe heiress ready to be absorbed into the Patterson empire. Jared picked her up himself in a silver Aston Martin. He was handsome in that privileged, prep school way, blonde hair, blue eyes, teeth too white to be natural. Stephanie, he said, kissing her hand. You're even more beautiful than Vernon described. Thank you, she murmured, her skin crawling at his touch. He took her to one of Atlanta's most exclusive restaurants, the kind where tables had to be reserved months in advance, and the chef had 3 Michelin stars. They were seated at a private table in a corner, partially hidden from the main dining room. Too isolated. Too private. So, Jared said once they'd ordered, Vernon tells me you've been studying in Japan. That must have been quite an experience. It was educational, Stephanie said carefully. What did you study? Besides art history? His smile was sharp. Because I've done my research, Stephanie. There's no record of you at any art history program in Tokyo. Her pulse quickened. I studied privately. Doing what? This and that. Cultural studies. Language. Martial arts. Jared leaned back in his chair, watching her. Self-defense? Weapons training. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. I'm not sure what you're implying, Stephanie said. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Jared pulled out his phone and showed her a photograph, Stephanie at age 19, outside her uncle Hiroshi's dojo in Tokyo, clearly in the middle of weapons training. You're very good at pretending to be useless, Jared continued. The bumbling intern act is particularly convincing. But I know exactly who you are, Stephanie Monroe. And exactly what you've been doing for the past 12 years. Stephanie's mind raced. How much did he know? What was his play here? If you know so much, she said carefully, why agree to this date? Because you're dangerous. And I like dangerous women. Jared's smile widened. Plus, your uncle doesn't know the truth about you. Which means you're as trapped in this situation as I am. What situation? The arranged marriage our families are orchestrating. Did you really think this was about romance? He laughed. Vernon needs the Patterson family's protection because of the FBI investigation. My grandfather wants access to the Monroe family's remaining assets and connections. So here we are, 2 people being sold off like prize horses. I have no intention of marrying you, Stephanie said flatly. Good. Because I have no intention of marrying you either. Jared refilled their wine glasses. But we could help each other. How? You want to know who killed your parents? I can give you that information. Stephanie's heart stopped. Why would you do that? Because I'm tired of being my grandfather's puppet. Because I want out of the family business. And because I think we could be useful to each other. He leaned forward. I'll help you get justice for your parents. In exchange, you help me disappear. It was too convenient. Too perfect. Which meant it was almost certainly a trap. I need time to think, Stephanie said. Of course. Take all the time you need. Jared stood, offering his hand. Shall we go? There's somewhere else I'd like to show you. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse. But she needed to know what game he was playing. She took his hand. He drove them to a warehouse district near the docks, exactly the kind of cliché location Stephanie hated. But when they pulled up to a nondescript building, Jared didn't take her inside. Instead, he handed her a key. "Storage Unit 247, he said. "Inside, you'll find copies of documents related to your parents' case. The real police reports. Photographs. Names. Everything you've been looking for. Why? Consider it a good faith gesture. Proof that I'm serious about helping you." He smiled. "But Stephanie? If you go to the FBI with this information, I'll know. And then this all goes away, along with any chance you have of finding out the truth." He drove away, leaving her standing in the parking lot holding the key. Stephanie immediately texted Lee Kyung, "We have a problem." His response, "Where are you?" She sent him the address, and 15 minutes later, his black Mercedes pulled up. "Don't go in there," he said, climbing out of the car. "It's obviously a trap. Or it's exactly what he says it is." Jared Patterson doesn't do anything out of the goodness of his heart. Lee Kyung took the key from her hand. "What exactly did he offer you?" Stephanie explained the entire conversation. Lee Kyung's expression grew darker with every word. "He's testing you," Lee Kyung said finally. "Seeing if you'll take the bait. If you go in there and take those documents, he'll have proof that you're investigating. He can use that against you, against Vernon, against me. But what if the information is real? Then it's real information in a trap." Lee Kyung pocketed the key. "I'll have someone I trust check it out. If there's anything useful, we'll get it safely. But you stay away from this place. And you stay away from Jared. I don't take orders, remember? This isn't an order. It's common sense." He gripped her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Jared is playing a game you don't understand yet. Until we know his endgame, you don't engage with him. Period. Vernon is going to push for us to keep seeing each other. Then you make excuses. You're busy. You're not feeling well. You need time to think about such an important relationship. He won't accept that for long. Then we'll figure something else out." But Stephanie, his hands were still on her shoulders, his face inches from hers. "You cannot trust Jared. No matter what he offers. No matter what he promises. He's a Patterson. Loyalty to the family is everything. Like you're loyal to them? I'm not family. I'm an employee they think they can control." His jaw tightened. Jared is different. He's been groomed since birth to take over the syndicate. He's not going to throw that away to help some girl get revenge. Then what's his angle? I don't know yet. But I promise you we'll find out. They stood there in the shadowy parking lot, his hands warm on her shoulders, their faces too close, the night air thick with tension that had nothing to do with Jared or the syndicate. "You should go home," Lee Kyung said finally, stepping back. "Before Vernon sends out a search party." "What are you going to do?" "What I always do. Investigate. Plan. Try to stay 3 steps ahead of people who want us both dead." He walked her to her car, and Stephanie couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them tonight. Something dangerous and undeniable. "Lee Kyung," she said as she opened her door. "Thank you. For having my back. Partners," he said simply. "That's what we agreed to." But the way he was looking at her suggested partnership wasn't the only thing he was thinking about. Over the next 2 weeks, Stephanie walked a tightrope between her different lives. By day, she was the incompetent intern at Patterson Monroe, spilling coffee and mixing up files while secretly photographing classified documents and planting listening devices in executive offices. By evening, she endured increasingly aggressive pressure from Uncle Vernon to see more of Jared, who continued his campaign of strategic flirtation mixed with unsettling revelations about her parents' case. And by night, she met with Lee Kyung in secret locations across Atlanta, parking garages, empty parks, once memorably in the back room of a Korean restaurant where the owner owed him a favor, comparing notes, sharing intelligence, and trying very hard not to acknowledge the growing attraction between them. It was exhausting and exhilarating and dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with the syndicate. "We need to talk about the FBI investigation," Lee Kyung said one night as they sat in his car on an overlook outside the city. "It's moving faster than I expected. Is that good or bad?" "Both. Good because it means they're taking the case seriously. Bad because Vernon is going to panic. Panicked people make desperate decisions." As if summoning him with their conversation, Stephanie's phone buzzed with a text from Uncle Vernon. "Family dinner tomorrow night. Mandatory. We have important news." That doesn't sound ominous at all, Stephanie muttered, showing Lee Kyung the message. Do you want me there? Can you arrange that? I'm the CEO of the company your family partially owns. Of course I can arrange it. He was already typing on his phone. I'll tell Vernon I want to discuss the FBI investigation with the family personally. Show solidarity. The next evening, Stephanie entered the Monroe dining room to find the entire family assembled again, but this time, Lee Kyung sat at Uncle Vernon's right hand, looking every inch the powerful CEO in another perfectly tailored suit. Their eyes met across the table, and Stephanie felt that familiar electric jolt. Excellent. Everyone's here, Uncle Vernon said. I've called this meeting to announce several important developments. First, the FBI has requested interviews with several family members regarding Patterson Monroe's business practices. Worried murmurs rippled through the room. Mr. Lee has assured me that the company's legal team will be present for all interviews, and that we have nothing to worry about as long as we're truthful and cooperative. Uncle Vernon smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Second, I'm pleased to announce that Stephanie has been seeing Jared Patterson, and the relationship is progressing beautifully. Stephanie nearly choked on her water. That's not. Jared spoke to me yesterday, Uncle Vernon continued, talking over her. He's quite taken with you, Stephanie. In fact, the Patterson family has invited our family to their estate next weekend for a formal introduction dinner. I haven't agreed to. Of course you'll go. This is exactly the kind of alliance we need right now. Uncle Vernon's tone brooked no argument. Which brings me to the third announcement. To ensure our family's financial security during this challenging time, I've made the difficult decision to restructure the family trust. The room went silent. What does that mean? Michael asked carefully. It means that effective immediately, all trust distributions are suspended pending the FBI investigation's conclusion. We need to present a unified financial front. You can't do that, Stephanie said, her voice sharp. Those trusts were set up by our parents. You're the trustee, not the owner. I'm acting in the family's best interest, Uncle Vernon said coldly. If anyone has a problem with my management of family assets, you're welcome to hire a lawyer and challenge me in court. But I doubt any of you want that kind of public scrutiny right now. It was a threat. Plain and simple. Stephanie glanced at Lee Kyung, who gave her the slightest shake of his head. Don't engage. Not here. Not now. She bit back her fury and nodded. After dinner, Lee Kyung lingered under the pretense of discussing business with Uncle Vernon. But he found Stephanie in the garden, where she was pacing furiously. He's stealing from us, she hissed. From his own family. I know. And we'll stop him. But not by confronting him directly. Lee Kyung pulled out his phone. I've been going through Vernon's financial records. He's been siphoning money from the family trust for years, funneling it through shell companies to offshore accounts. Can we prove it? I'm working on it. But here's the interesting part. He's not keeping the money. He's paying someone. Regular transfers of $50,000 every month to an account in the Cayman Islands. Blackmail. Or payment for services rendered. Lee Kyung's expression was grim. I think Vernon didn't just help arrange your parents' deaths. I think he hired the killer. The world tilted. Do you know who? Not yet. But I'm close. The payment pattern matches similar transactions from around the time your parents died. If I can trace the account holder. Lee Kyung. Uncle Vernon's voice boomed from the house. I need to speak with you before you leave. Coming. Lee Kyung called back. Then, lower, to Stephanie, the Patterson dinner next weekend. I'll be there too. As CEO, I'm always invited to these things. We can use it as an opportunity to search the Patterson estate. That's insane. The security. We'll be focused on the guests, not on you wandering off to use the bathroom. He touched her hand briefly, the gesture hidden by the garden's shadows. Trust me. Then he was gone, leaving Stephanie alone in the darkness with her racing thoughts. The Patterson estate was exactly as obscene as Stephanie expected. A sprawling compound north of Atlanta that looked like a European castle had been transplanted to Georgia. Armed security patrolled the grounds, cameras covered every angle, and the guest list read like a who's who of Atlanta's elite. Stephanie arrived with her family, wearing an emerald green dress, Aunt Patricia's choice, not hers, that made her feel like she was playing dress-up. Jared met them at the door, all charm and fake warmth. "Stephanie, you look stunning," he said, kissing her cheek. "I'm so glad you could come. Like I had a choice," she muttered. He laughed like she was joking. Inside, the Patterson patriarch, Gerald Patterson, 82 years old and still sharp as a blade, held court in the main salon. He was exactly what Stephanie imagined a crime lord would look like: distinguished, charismatic, with eyes that saw everything and forgot nothing. "Miss Monroe," he said when Jared introduced them. "I've heard so much about you. Your father was a good man. His death was a tragedy." The audacity of this man, expressing sympathy for a murder he'd ordered. "Thank you," Stephanie managed through clenched teeth. "I hope you and Jared are getting to know each other well. He speaks very highly of you. We've had some interesting conversations." Gerald's smile sharpened. "I'm sure you have. Jared tells me you're quite intelligent. Observant. Those are good qualities in a Patterson wife." "I haven't agreed to." "Grandfather," Jared interrupted smoothly, "why don't we let Stephanie meet some of the other guests? I'm sure she'd love to see the art collection." He steered her away before she could respond, his hand firm on her elbow. "Sorry about that," he murmured. "Grandfather gets enthusiastic about family expansion." "I'm not marrying you, Jared." "I know. I told you I don't want to marry you either." He leaned closer. "But we need to make them think we're considering it. At least until we've both gotten what we need." "Which is what, exactly?" "For you? Information about your parents' killers. For me? A way out of this life." His voice dropped. "Did you check the storage unit?" "My partner did." Jared's eyebrows rose. "Partner? How interesting. Anyone I know?" "None of your business." "Fair enough." They'd reached a quieter corner of the house, away from the main party. "The documents I gave you were real, by the way. Did you find them helpful?" Stephanie hadn't actually seen them. Lee Kyung had taken the information and was verifying it independently. But she wasn't about to tell Jared that. "They raised questions," she said carefully. "I can answer those questions. But first, I need you to do something for me." There it is. The catch. Not a catch. An exchange. Jared pulled out his phone and showed her a photograph. "Do you recognize this man?" Stephanie's heart stopped. It was the mystery man from her parents' case file. The one who'd been following them before they died. "Who is he?" she asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. "His name is Viktor Morozov. Russian. Specialist in making deaths look like accidents. He's worked for the syndicate for 20 years. Did he kill my parents?" "Yes." The confirmation, delivered so casually, made Stephanie's vision blur with rage. "Where is he?" "That's what I need your help with. Victor's gone rogue. He's threatening to expose the syndicate unless we pay him $50 million. My grandfather wants him eliminated quietly. And you want me to do it," Stephanie said flatly. "I want us to work together to find him. I'll give you access to all of the syndicate's resources, files, surveillance, contacts. In exchange, when we find Victor, you help me stage my death so I can disappear." It was insane. It was risky beyond measure. It was also possibly the only way to get close enough to her parents' actual killer to make him pay. "I need time to think," Stephanie said. "Of course. But don't take too long. Victor's deadline is in 3 weeks. After that, he starts talking to the FBI." Jared's attention was caught by someone across the room. "I need to go play the dutiful grandson. Why don't you explore the house? The library is particularly impressive, 3rd floor, East Wing. I think you'd enjoy it." He walked away, leaving Stephanie with directions to a specific location. This was clearly a test or a trap. She pulled out her phone and texted Lee Kyung, 3rd floor East Wing Library. "Jared specifically directed me there." "Trap?" The response: "I'm on the 2nd floor West Wing. Heading your way. Don't go in until I get there." Stephanie made her way through the house as casually as possible, accepting champagne from passing servers, nodding politely at guests she didn't know. The 3rd floor was quieter, with fewer people wandering the halls. The library door was unlocked. Inside, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves created a maze of knowledge and shadows. And there, standing by the window with a drink in his hand, was Lee Kyung. "You got here fast," Stephanie said. "I was already up here, searching the study next door." He set down his drink. "Did Jared say anything about why he wanted you to come here?" "No, just that I'd find it interesting." They explored the library together, careful not to disturb anything obviously valuable. It wasn't until Lee Kyung checked behind a particular set of encyclopedias that they found it. A hidden safe, built into the wall. Can you open it? Stephanie whispered. Give me 5 minutes. Lee Kyung's lockpicking skills were impressive. 3 minutes later, the safe clicked open. Inside were documents. Lots of documents. Financial records, photographs, and... Oh my God, Stephanie breathed. A contract. Dated 3 weeks before her parents' deaths. Signed by Gerald Patterson, Uncle Vernon, and a third party listed only as VM. Viktor Morozov. The contract outlined payment of $500,000 for the elimination of Jonathan and Diana Monroe, along with the elimination of FBI agent David Lee. Proof. Concrete proof of the conspiracy. We need to photograph everything, Lee Kyung said, already pulling out his phone. They worked quickly, documenting every page, every signature. This was it, the evidence that could bring down the entire syndicate. Why would Jared lead you here? Lee Kyung muttered as he worked. He has to know about the safe. He said Victor is blackmailing the syndicate, threatening to talk to the FBI. Stephanie's mind raced. What if Jared is setting up his own grandfather, giving us the evidence to take him down? That doesn't make sense. He'd lose everything, unless that's what he wants. To destroy the whole thing and walk away clean. Before Lee Kyung could respond, voices echoed in the hallway outside. Told you to check up here. I heard something. Security. Lee Kyung grabbed Stephanie's hand and pulled her behind one of the massive bookcases just as the library door opened. 2 guards entered, flashlights sweeping the room. Stephanie and Lee Kyung were pressed together in the narrow space between the bookcase and the wall, barely breathing. His body was warm against hers, his heart racing just as fast as her own. The guards checked the safe, still open. Shit, one muttered. Someone's been in here. Tell Mr. Patterson. Lock down the house. No one leaves until we figure out who. The guards rushed out, leaving Stephanie and Lee Kyung alone in the sudden silence. We need to get out of here, Lee Kyung whispered, his breath warm against her ear. Now. But before they could move, the library door opened again. Jared stood there, perfectly calm, perfectly composed. I assume you found what you were looking for, he asked. Lee Kyung stepped forward, putting himself between Stephanie and Jared. This was a setup. Of course it was. But not the kind you think. Jared closed the door behind him. Relax, Mr. Lee. I'm not going to turn you in. I'm the one who left the safe open. Why? Stephanie demanded. Because I meant what I said. I want out. And the only way to get out of the syndicate alive is to destroy it completely. His smile was cold. You two have been running your own investigation for months. Don't look so surprised. I've known about Mr. Lee's real agenda since he first approached the Patterson family for a job 8 years ago. Lee Kyung's entire body tensed. You're lying. Am I? Did you really think you could infiltrate an international criminal organization without us noticing? My grandfather knew exactly who you were from day one. He just found it useful to keep you around. To see what information you'd feed back to your FBI handlers. I don't have FBI handlers. Not anymore. They cut you loose 4 years ago when you went too deep undercover. Now you're just a man on a mission with nothing to lose. Jared's gaze shifted to Stephanie. And you're a woman who wants revenge. Together, you're dangerous. Separately, you're manageable. That's why I'm offering you a deal. We don't make deals with murderers, Stephanie spat. I've never killed anyone, Jared said quietly. I've spent my entire life trying to avoid becoming what my family wants me to be. But I'm running out of time. In 6 months, my grandfather plans to officially retire and name me as his successor. If that happens, I'm trapped in this life forever. So blow the whistle. Turn state's evidence, Lee Kyung said. And spend the rest of my life in witness protection? No thanks. Jared leaned against the door. Here's my offer. I give you everything you need to take down the syndicate. Names, accounts, contracts, locations. Everything. In exchange, you help me fake my death convincingly enough that my family won't come looking for me. You're asking us to let you escape justice, Stephanie said. I'm asking you to prioritize. You can spend your energy chasing me, a person who's never actually committed a crime, or you can use me to catch the people who murdered your parents and dozens of others. Your choice. It was a devil's bargain. But it was also possibly their best chance at bringing down the entire organization. Stephanie looked at Lee Kyung. He gave her the slightest nod. We'll consider it, Stephanie said. But first, tell us where Viktor Morozov is. Jared smiled. I thought you'd never ask. The address Jared provided led them to a luxury condo in Buckhead, Viktor Morozov's safe house, where he was supposedly hiding out while he waited for the syndicate's ransom payment. This is insane, Stephanie said as she and Lee Kyung sat in his car across the street, watching the building. We can't just walk in there. We're not going to. Lee Kyung checked his weapon, a sleek Glock that he'd pulled from a hidden compartment in the car. I am. You're going to stay here and keep watch. Absolutely not. Stephanie. We're partners, remember? That means we do this together. Lee Kyung looked like he wanted to argue, but after 12 years of training with Uncle Hiroshi, Stephanie could handle herself in a fight. He knew it, even if he didn't want to admit it. Fine. But you follow my lead. And if I tell you to run, you run. We'll see. They entered the building separately, Lee Kyung through the front as a resident, Stephanie through the service entrance using a security bypass she'd learned from one of Uncle Hiroshi's contacts. They met on the 14th floor, outside Unit 1407. The door was slightly ajar. Never a good sign. Lee Kyung entered first, gun drawn, with Stephanie close behind. The apartment was silent, expensively furnished, and completely empty. Except for the man sitting in the leather chair by the window, a bullet hole in his forehead. Viktor Morozov was already dead. Jared, Stephanie breathed. He set us up. But before Lee Kyung could respond, the apartment door slammed shut behind them. And standing there, gun in hand, was Uncle Vernon. Hello, Stephanie, he said pleasantly. I've been waiting for you. Everything happened at once. Lee Kyung aimed his weapon at Vernon. Vernon aimed his weapon at Stephanie. And Stephanie realized with crystal clarity that they'd walked directly into a trap. Put the gun down, Mr. Lee, Vernon said calmly. Unless you want to see your partner's brains all over that nice white wall. Don't do it, Stephanie said. But Lee Kyung slowly lowered his weapon. Kick it over here, Vernon ordered. Good boy. Now sit down, both of you. They sat on the couch while Vernon kept his gun trained on them, looking almost bored. I have to say, I'm impressed, Vernon continued. You two have been quite the thorn in my side these past few weeks. Did you really think I wouldn't notice my incompetent niece suddenly taking an interest in the family business? Or that our CEO was spending an awful lot of time with said niece? How long have you known? Lee Kyung asked. About you? Years. About Stephanie's little revenge quest? Since the day she arrived in Atlanta. Vernon smiled. I have eyes everywhere, Mr. Lee. Including in Tokyo. I've known exactly what Stephanie was learning from her dear Uncle Hiroshi. Then why let me come back? Stephanie demanded. Because I needed to know how much you'd figured out. And I needed to flush out everyone who might be helping you. Vernon's gaze shifted to Lee Kyung. Speaking of which, the FBI no longer employs you, do they? You're just a rogue agent with a vendetta. Which means when I kill you both and frame you for Viktor's murder, no one will come looking for answers. They'll know it was a setup, Stephanie said. Will they? Let's see. Bitter daughter returns home after 12 years to avenge her parents' deaths. Seduces the CEO, convinces him to help her. Together they track down the actual killer, Viktor Morozov, and execute him. But then they turn on each other, and in the struggle, both end up dead. Vernon shrugged. It's a tragedy, really. But a believable one. Except Jared knows the truth, Lee Kyung said. Jared is on a plane to Singapore as we speak, where he'll unfortunately die in a hotel fire tomorrow night. Faulty wiring. Very sad. Vernon stood, moving closer. The syndicate is cleaning house, you see. Viktor knew too much. Jared was getting cold feet. And you two were getting too close to information that would be very damaging to very powerful people. Including you, Stephanie said. Including me. I've worked too hard to build my position in this organization to let my dead brother's daughter tear it all down. He raised the gun. Any last words? Yeah, Lee Kyung said. You talk too much. Everything happened in a blur. Lee Kyung threw himself at Vernon, knocking the gun from his hand. Stephanie dove for the weapon Lee Kyung had kicked across the floor. Vernon and Lee Kyung crashed into the coffee table, struggling for control. Stephanie grabbed the gun, spun around, and found herself face to face with two more men entering the apartment. Syndicate enforcers. She fired twice. Both men went down. Behind her, Lee Kyung had gotten the upper hand, pinning Vernon to the floor. But Vernon was reaching for something in his jacket. Lee Kyung, Stephanie shouted. Another gun. Vernon had another gun. The shot echoed through the apartment. Lee Kyung jerked backward, blood blooming across his shoulder. Stephanie fired without thinking, without hesitating. Uncle Vernon's body went still. For a moment, the apartment was silent except for Lee Kyung's labored breathing. How bad? Stephanie asked, rushing to his side. I've had worse. His face was pale, his hand pressed against the wound. We need to leave. Now, before more of them show up. Stephanie helped him to his feet, and they stumbled toward the door. Behind them, for bodies and enough evidence to connect the Monroe and Patterson families to decades of crime. We need to call someone, Stephanie said as they made it to the stairwell. FBI, police, someone. No, not yet. Lee Kyung was breathing hard, each step clearly causing him pain. We call them now, before we have all the evidence organized, and the syndicate's lawyers will bury everything. Vernon will be just a concerned uncle who died tragically trying to stop his niece from murdering people. Then what do? We finish this. Tonight. They made it to Lee Kyung's car, where Stephanie drove while he directed her to a storage facility on the outskirts of Atlanta. Inside Unit 237 was everything he'd collected over 8 years. Documents, recordings, financial records, testimony from witnesses who'd been too afraid to come forward. I was waiting for one more piece, Lee Kyung said, his voice growing weaker. The proof that connected Gerald Patterson directly to the murders. But Vernon's death changes things. We need to move now. You need a hospital. After. He pulled out his phone with his good hand. I'm going to make a call. To someone I trust at the FBI. Someone who's been waiting for this moment as long as I have. The call lasted 10 minutes. By the end of it, federal agents were being dispatched to the Patterson estate, to Patterson Monroe Industries, to a dozen syndicate locations across 3 states. The trap was springing shut. They'll want our testimony, the FBI agent, a woman named Sarah Chin, said over the phone. Both of you. Protective custody until the trials. Agreed, Lee Kyung said. But first, I need medical attention. There's an ambulance 2 minutes away. Lee Kyung ended the call and looked at Stephanie. His face was gray, his breathing shallow. I need you to promise me something, he said. You're not dying. Don't be dramatic. Promise me that after this is over, after the trials, after everything, you'll go back to Japan. Start fresh. Leave all of this behind. What about you? I'll be in witness protection. New name, new life. We'll probably never see each other again. The words hit Stephanie harder than she expected. After weeks of working together, of trusting each other, of feeling things she hadn't let herself acknowledge, this was how it ended? I don't want to leave, she said quietly. Lee Kyung reached up with his good hand, cupping her face. You have to. The syndicate has a long memory. Even with the top leadership gone, there will be people looking for revenge. You'll never be safe here. Then come with me. To Japan. We can both disappear. Stephanie. I know it's crazy. I know we barely know each other. But I trust you more than I've trusted anyone in 12 years. And I think she stopped, her throat tight. I think I might love you. The confession hung in the air between them. I know I love you, Lee Kyung said. That's why I'm telling you to run. Then he kissed her, soft and desperate and full of everything they couldn't say. The sound of sirens interrupted them. The ambulance, followed by a convoy of FBI vehicles. The next few hours were a chaos of questions, medical treatment, and federal agents securing evidence. Stephanie gave her statement 3 times, each time adding more details about the syndicate's operations, her uncle's involvement, Jared's role in exposing the safe. By dawn, Gerald Patterson was in custody, along with 17 other high-ranking syndicate members. The Patterson-Monroe merger was being dissolved. The Monroe family assets were being unfrozen and investigated. And Lee Kyung was in surgery, with doctors assuring Stephanie that the bullet had missed all major arteries. He was going to survive. They both were. A week later, Stephanie stood in the Atlanta FBI field office, signing the last of the protective custody paperwork. Lee Kyung sat across from her, his arm in a sling, but otherwise looking remarkably good for someone who'd been shot. "So that's it," Agent Chen said. "You're both free to go into witness protection. New identities, new locations, all expenses covered until the trials." "And after the trials?" Stephanie asked. "That depends. If you testify, if the convictions hold, you might be able to reclaim some version of your old lives. But it'll be years before that happens." Years. Stephanie looked at Lee Kyung. He was already looking at her. "Agent Chin," Lee Kyung said, not taking his eyes off Stephanie. "What if we wanted to be placed together? Same location, same protection detail." Chen's eyebrows rose. "That's unusual, but not impossible. Is that what you both want?" "Yes," Stephanie and Lee Kyung said simultaneously. Chen smiled. "Then I'll make it happen. Give me 24 hours to arrange the logistics." They were placed in a safe house in Seattle, a city neither of them had ever lived in, far from Atlanta's heat and history. The house was modest but comfortable, with a view of Puget Sound and enough security to keep them safe from any syndicate retaliation. It should have felt like a prison. Instead, it felt like home. "I can't believe we're doing this," Stephanie said on their first night, standing on the deck and watching the sunset over the water. "Living together. Playing house. After everything." Lee Kyung came up behind her, wrapping his good arm around her waist. "We've been through a war together. Compared to that, domestic life should be easy." "Should be. But we barely know each other outside of investigations and near-death experiences. Then let's get to know each other." He turned her to face him. "Hi, I'm Lee Kyung. I'm 32 years old, I hate seafood, I read philosophy for fun, and I'm completely in love with a woman who once barged into my bathroom and saw me naked." Stephanie laughed, genuinely laughed for the first time in weeks. "Hi, I'm Stephanie Monroe. I'm 28, I can kill you 12 different ways, I have a weakness for bad action movies, and I'm in love with a man who's probably too good for me." "Definitely not too good for you," Lee Kyung said and kissed her. This kiss was different from the desperate one in the car. This was slow, thorough, full of promise and possibility. This was the kiss of two people who'd survived hell and found each other on the other side. When they finally broke apart, Lee Kyung was smiling a real smile, the kind Stephanie suspected he didn't share with many people. "So what now?" she asked. "Now we wait for the trials. We testify. We help put the syndicate away forever. And after that?" "After that." Lee Kyung pulled her closer. "After that, we figure out who we are when we're not running or fighting or hiding. We build something real. Together." "I like the sound of that." They stood there on the deck as the sun set over Seattle, two people who'd lost everything and found each other in the wreckage. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, months of testimony, years of trials, the constant threat of retaliation. But for the first time since her parents died, Stephanie felt something she'd almost forgotten: hope. The trials took 18 months. Stephanie and Lee Kyung testified for a combined 40 hours, their statements providing the framework that brought down the entire Ouroboros syndicate. Gerald Patterson died in prison before his sentencing, officially ruled a heart attack, though Stephanie suspected otherwise. The remainder of the Patterson family scattered, their empire dissolved. Uncle Vernon's body was found in Viktor Morozov's apartment, and the official story became that he'd been killed by the Russian assassin in a deal gone wrong. The truth was more complicated, but sometimes justice had to settle for close enough. The Monroe family assets were unfrozen and redistributed to the legitimate heirs, Stephanie included. Her trust fund, plus her share of the family business, once it was legally separated from the syndicate's operations, made her independently wealthy. She donated most of it to organizations helping victims of organized crime. Jared Patterson's death in Singapore was eventually revealed to be fake, and he became a federal witness, providing testimony that corroborated everything Stephanie and Lee Kyung had said. Last she heard, he was living under an assumed name in New Zealand, managing a vineyard. As for Stephanie and Lee Kyung, they were released from witness protection after the convictions held up on appeal. Lee Kyung reclaimed his real name and a quiet life as a consultant for the FBI, helping them understand organized crime operations. Stephanie finished her degree in international relations and started working with the State Department, using her language skills and cultural knowledge to fight human trafficking. They bought a house in Portland, not Seattle. They'd both agreed they needed somewhere that felt like their choice, not the government's. A craftsman bungalow with a garden and room for all of Lee Kyung's books. And on a rainy Thursday in April, they got married in a courthouse ceremony with only 2 witnesses, Uncle Hiroshi, who'd flown in from Tokyo, and Agent Sarah Chin, who'd become a friend over the years of working together. Your parents would be proud, Hiroshi told Stephanie after the ceremony, pulling her into a rare hug. You got justice for them. And you built a life worth living. We built a life, Stephanie corrected, looking at Lee Kyung, who was talking quietly with Sarah. I couldn't have done any of it alone. The best revenge is a life well lived, Hiroshi said. You've done more than survive, Stephanie. You've thrived. That night, in their house that smelled like rain and new beginnings, Lee Kyung and Stephanie sat on their couch with takeout Chinese food and a movie neither of them paid attention to. Any regrets? Lee Kyung asked. About which part? The revenge quest? The FBI investigation? Barging into your bathroom? All of it. Stephanie considered. No. Even the painful parts led us here. What about you? My only regret is that it took me so long to tell you I loved you. I think I knew that first day, when you stood in my penthouse looking like you wanted to kill me. I did want to kill you. I thought you were one of them. Instead, I was just a man trying to do the right thing and falling in love with a woman who was completely out of my league. Stephanie laughed and kissed him. I'm pretty sure it's the other way around. They sat together in comfortable silence, 2 survivors who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen to build something bright. The syndicate was gone. Vernon was gone. The mystery of her parents' deaths was solved. And Stephanie Monroe, the heiress who'd pretended to be useless, who'd rejected blind dates and barged into a CEO's bath, had found the one thing she'd stopped believing in. True love. Not the fairy tale kind. The real kind, forged in fire and sealed with trust. The kind worth fighting for. And that, beautiful souls, is how you fight for justice and find love. What did you think? I need to know your favorite moments. Drop them in the comments below. Was it the bathtub scene? The partnership? The final confrontation? Tell me everything. If you love this story, please hit that like button and subscribe. We're so close to our goal, and your support means we can bring you more unique stories like this one. Share this with your friends who love dark romance and strong heroines. Thanks for watching, and remember, the best revenge is living well and loving fearlessly.